Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are here again at the Fife Milton Edgewood Chamber of Commerce office, and I am joined today again with Deanna Keller. And you probably don't know this, but this is our take two. We had a little technical difficulty yesterday with the sound, so we're having to do this again, but we had a good practice run yesterday and we're ready to do this again. Thank you so much for joining us again. And to start out, Deanna, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you are running for Port Commissioner for the Port of Tacoma?
Sure, and I'm running for position 3, just to clarify that. But about my background, I grew up in the state of Washington, grew up in Federal Way, live in Gig Harbor. Some of my qualifications, I'm currently right now a business owner and have been for the last 11 years. And we do a lot with job creation. It's a plastics fabrication company, so we actually bring in unskilled laborers who work with us, and we train them to do plastics fabrication or all kinds of fabrication, and then they end up becoming machine operators. So before that, I was a public school principal in Clover Park and then also in Puyallup. And I was a district administrator as well. Before that, I was in the United States Marine Corps as a veteran. I've done a lot of civic work with Goodwill Industries, the Broadway Center for the Performing Arts. I was president of that board and served on that board for 8 years. I'm involved with a lot of different things, the Propeller Club, Tacoma Sister Cities program, and things like that. I've been very involved in not only just Tacoma, but basically Pierce County in general. The reason that I'm running for court is to continue the work that I've done with the Economic Development Board and Tacoma Pierce County Chamber, as well as my work in our business. And I want to be able to create jobs. And so that's my primary purpose, and also to strengthen our economy here in our region.
Thank you. And through with your background, have you had any other areas of public service that you enjoyed and you'd like to share?
Well, I think, certainly being a public school principal, I enjoyed that. Also enjoyed, I mentored, Goodwill Industries has a program, or had a program a while ago until they lost their funding, but it was called the Good Guides program. I enjoyed mentoring a homeless young woman who graduated from Lincoln High School with a 3.8 grade point average, and we stayed in touch for 5 years. But the goal is to continue to make sure that adolescents can hook up with a mentor adult, and we all know that in our school experiences that we've had teachers who have inspired us, or other adults in our lives that have inspired us. So it's trying to have that business youth connection as well. So those were definitely enjoyable things for me.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic experience. Okay, so tell us about some of the strengths you see that the Port of Tacoma has now, and how can you build upon those strengths?
Well, obviously, the Port of Tacoma is more than I think a lot of us realize. It's an international gateway. It serves as an import-export area, not only for the state of Washington, but for Asia and for Alaska and most of the West Coast. In fact, when I visited Tote Maritime and had a tour of their ship North Star, they talked to me about the fact that it's mostly their biggest customers are Walmart and Fred Meyer. So most of the things that end up happening with regard to taking things up to Alaska, it's like, imagine that your milk only comes twice a week, which it does, and it comes from Tacoma. So it's not only milk, it's also clothing, it's construction materials, it's vehicles, it's sometimes military cargo that gets up to the bases up there. So it's incredibly important to continue to look for businesses to bring them into the port so that we can create more and new jobs.
Yeah, I think that I heard that something like 85 or 90% of all consumables that go into the state of Alaska come from the Port of Tacoma.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy to think about. Okay, and how about areas of opportunity that are in the port? What areas do you think could be improved upon, and how could you help that?
Oh, sure. Well, I think first of all, it's like our infrastructure is difficult. Anybody living and working around the port knows that it's congested, that traffic is stalled. It's hard to get trucks in and out. We used to be basically 70% train operated with bringing things into the port. Now it's about 50-50, and I think that the infrastructure needs to be changed and it needs to be redone so that it actually accommodates for that shift in transportation. With that, that would help us be even more competitive by being able to bring goods in and out faster. It's that customer service piece of it as well. There's the infrastructure on the outside. I don't know if a lot of people know that with the 167 corridor, it's called the Puget Sound Gateway now, which also includes the bike trail as part of that. But that's designed over the next 3 years to be able to improve our traffic coming in and out through the port. I don't know if a lot of people also know this, that the port has contributed $30,000, both the Tacoma port and the Seattle port, to that infrastructure. So there is a monetary contribution that's going into that as well. The other thing that we need to take a look at is we need to take a look at some of the taxation that we have going on. I think if people have heard about the harbor maintenance tax, it's fairly expensive. It's a certain amount per container, and times like 2,000 containers is quite a bit of money. And so if you don't have to pay that, why wouldn't they want to go up into British Columbia where there is no harbor maintenance tax? That maintenance tax is not so important for Tacoma because Tacoma is a deep water port, and the maintenance tax is designed throughout the United States to be taxed on all shipping containers, and it's primarily used to dredge shallower ports on a continuous basis. We don't need that, and so we don't reap the benefits of the taxation either. So it's a lose-lose for us as well.
Yeah, that's a big issue. And as far as top agenda items, do you have a top item, should you be elected, that you would like to focus on?
Well, I definitely think strategic planning, and I know that the commissioners right now are in the process of creating either a 5 or a 10-year new plan. I think the infrastructure plan is going to be part of that. I think sitting down with all stakeholders, bringing people in is going to be important. I think the communication coming into the port and out of the port, which I believe is a commissioner's job, is to report back to and from the constituents to the organization, as well as being a cheerleader for the organization. So I'd like to do that. I'd like to use the marketing skills and also the principal skills that I had as a school district administrator. You're always a cheerleader for your school and your families and all of that. And you also report back and be able to get the staff to work together so that they are meeting the needs of those kids. So it's, I've done that for a long period of time. I enjoy doing that. I don't have a hard time listening to diverse points of view, and I respect them, but I also want to get people to meet in the middle. I'm tired of the polarized politics, and I think a lot of us are, and that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to run for office.
Very good. Okay, let's talk about the Tacoma Tide Flats sub-area plan. Do you have, what priority outcomes would you like to see come out of that?
Well, I think the first one is getting people to sit down together. In 1984, we had the Puyallup land agreement, and it was land use agreement, and it was because people weren't getting along very well, misunderstanding each other. They came together, they learned more from each other. It's been 25 years since that's happened, and I think the goal primarily has been to get people together to talk, to understand what is important about the port, what are our goals, not only for now, but in the future and the long-term future. There are so many people who don't understand what our port is about. Let's see, what else? I forgot the question again now.
The sub-area plan?
Oh, the sub-area plan, yes. The one thing that I wanted to that I want to make sure of is that we are attracting business. We're not keeping business from being out of there. I think sometimes business owners, if they know that zoning is going to change or whatever, it allows for a certain amount of unpredictability, because someone who is going to come in and to do tenant improvements or to build a facility that's going to cost $100 million, you're going to be a little bit, if it's going to be a risky situation for you, you're not going to want to do that. You'll, pick Kent, or you'll pick somewhere else because it's not so unstable. And so I want to make sure that business owners know and feel that it still is a stable place, that we want to attract business. So I think that's, again, part of that communication plan, and making sure that all needs are met and that we're not giving up something very important, which is economic development in our region, for something else.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go off script just a little bit here and ask you where you stand on LNG.
Sure. Well, I think, and I've also done a lot of research about this. We are obviously, as a society, addicted to fossil fuels. And I think if we were to go cold turkey, I think it would be really difficult for a lot of people. In fact, a lot of people aren't doing that right now. 72% of our greenhouse gas, are produced by road traffic, which is all of us. In fact, if you go through the Tacoma interchange and you see all the congestion all the time, it's huge. 11% of that is the marine traffic. Any opportunity to lower greenhouse gas emissions, I'm okay with, as long as it meets the proper safety standards. And everything that I have looked at, it's gone through governmental agencies giving their okay and giving the appropriate amount of environmental impact studies. So it makes me feel that it's a safe enough thing. Why wouldn't we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and also for the laborers who are at the port? So I am supportive of it because of all those things. It accomplishes all the goals that we want. It's not something that's going to be an end goal. We need to continue to look for other ways that lower greenhouse gas emissions even more, or to get away from fossil fuels. And I would be game for that and be looking for that as well.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, talking about communication, how do you see the Port of Tacoma interfacing with the South Sound community in general?
So I think this is something where, when I've talked with other elected officials, they think that there's probably an opportunity for port commissioners to go out and to have talks like a town hall talk, or to go to make sure that you're being seen at events and festivals. I'm planning to do doorbelling this weekend. I'm going to go up into eastern Pierce County, I think Bonnie Lake in particular. I'm also going to go into my neighborhood in the city that I live in Gig Harbor, and I'm also going to be going into northeast Tacoma. I want them to see me. I want to hear what they have to say. I want to be able to answer any questions. And I know that a lot of elected officials, and I'm going to use one of my favorites, Derek Kilmer. He goes out when he's on break, he visits all the time, and I think that that's important to do. So, and I'll tell you, I love doorbelling, and every time I get the opportunity to go out and doorbell, I just absolutely love it. So you learn so much about people, and I like the person-to-person interaction. I think a lot of people like that too.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that that's an important thing to do. I worked in Bonnie Lake for 6 years at the chamber there, and I know that the general sentiment in the area is that things that go on at the port don't really apply to them, or they don't need to worry about it very much. They don't think about it a lot, or if they see a name on the ballot that for port commissioner, they don't really know what to do. So I'm glad we're doing these to try to introduce people to the port commissioners, and hopefully see what they're all about, and have people learn a little bit more about each of you. So that communication is very important. Okay, moving on to the next question. Talking about economic development. How can we be leveraging the work on economic development outside of the port to attract and retain businesses and family wage jobs in the South Sound area?
Well, there are a couple of things that we need to do, and I think we talked about it yesterday, is that we need to clean up the contaminated lands that are there right now, because we have a lot of industrial property that's not being utilized because it is contaminated. Improving the infrastructure so then we can continue to solicit customers or businesses from other areas, looking for the kinds of businesses that we want to see there. And I think that's probably a good goal for the sub-area plan folks too, is to talk about what do we want? Do we want to have minimum wage jobs, or do we want to have family wage jobs? And how are we going to do that? And so we just need to decide, where we want to move, what we want to be when we grow up, I guess, 20 years down the line, 40 years down the line. So that's a good topic for discussion and for strategic planning, but it's obviously marketing. So.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so talking about transportation, how do you see transportation and public transit and freight mobility partnering to reduce congestion, increase transit ridership, and get goods to the market faster?
So I know that the sound transit is kind of in the works in terms of being, brought down into here. And actually the port is talking about doing more passenger ferry or passenger vessel. People have asked me about cruise ships, and I think that, a couple of people have said, Seattle does cruise ships really well, but I think that this would be something that would help alleviate congestion so that people would either take the rail in, grab a ferry, go to Bremerton, go to Seattle, versus going all the way up to Seattle, taking a ferry to Bremerton, or things like that. So things are in the work, and people are looking at that as well.
Very good. And so there are you have several opponents in the race. I think there's 3 of you.
Yes.
If you could ask them anything, what would that be? And how would you answer that same question?
So I think I'd ask, what kinds of experiences have you had, and for how long? Just very specific things. What have you done to create economic growth? What have you done to create jobs? Have you done any of those things? What have you done to communicate out? What have you, what kind of things that they have done within their career? And I think to answer it with me, and the reason I decided to run is because I thought about the fact that I'm very goal-oriented. Obviously, being a Marine Corps veteran, I like to be very strategic and disciplined, but also as a public school principal, I like to use data. I like to get everybody's point of view, bring it together. And so I've got 24 years of leadership experience, both in the public and the private sector, of doing just those things, to promote economic growth and also to get people to work together. So I have kind of a diverse background, and that would be something that I would want to see. The other one would be taking a look at endorsements. If you look at endorsements, you can tell a little bit more about the person than just who's funding them. And so if someone has endorsements on either side of the aisle, the political aisle, or has stakeholders that are supporting them, like I'm going to give the example, I've been endorsed by Longshoremen's Union, firefighters, Tacoma Pierce County Realtors Association, Pacific Maritime Shipping Association, Oak Harbor Freight. So these are all stakeholders within this, and I'm doing this purposefully on the campaign trail so that when I am elected, if I'm elected, then I can also pull in their resources, talk with them, use them as resources as well to help again, bring everybody together. And I especially want to bring our labor force together, closer in. I want to develop a team, because that's how you get things done in the best way.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I think it is important to look at endorsements and see who's behind you, and if they're the type of people that you support also, and you know what, you always want to find someone who has the same values. Okay, so do you have any final thoughts or anything that you'd like to add that we haven't talked about? Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I saw someone who was watching who popped something up. In fact, it made me pause for a second while I was talking. And so I did want to talk a little bit about that. Someone was talking about interim regulations. And I testified as a business owner at City Council when they had a public hearing about that. And what I did say was that, interim regulations are here. It's been agreed upon. We've all decided that that's where we're going to go. I think the question was, should we amend them and make them stricter? And I think that, we need to be careful about that. And my whole purpose with that is it has to do with, again, business predictability. If you're constantly changing the rules, then people are going to say, I give up, I quit, I'm moving. So, and then the jobs go with them. So I don't want that for us. I want to keep our jobs in Tacoma. I want to make sure that we promote small business. I want to make sure that we're also good environmental stewards. They go hand in hand. This is not a mutually exclusive thing. Business owners need to constantly look for ways to improve their environment as well.
Okay. Well, very good. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you will all join us next time. I wanted to just do a quick little shout out to the people who are watching. We've got Elizabeth Thompson, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today. She joined us yesterday for the interview, but hello, Elizabeth. I hope you're doing well. And our board president, Denise Christofferson. So hello to both of you. And so I want to just share with everyone that voting day is August 6th. So please mail in your ballots. And I don't think that they've been mailed to homes yet. I don't think they'll be mailed until the 18th. But be watching for those and make sure you send your ballot in and vote. And anything else that we need to add?
Sure. If you have any questions, please, visit my website. It has a telephone number, email address. I just spoke with someone just before I got here as well, who just wanted to know where I stood on several issues. I will respond. I'm very good at responding very quickly for those who have contacted me so far. The other thing is, please look at my website, which is deannakeller.com, and it gives more information about me. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. I would really appreciate your vote. I want to be your port commissioner, and I want to continue to strengthen our economic region for years to come.
All right. Well, thank you again, and I hope you will join us on Friday, where we will be interviewing another port commissioner candidate, Kristen Eng. And we will see you Friday.
Thank you so much.